think we're hitting the airwaves. Everything ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome to our webinar. This is sort of a new experiment for us. We're going to be talking about our system. My name is Andy Lockwood, and with me is
Pearl Lockwood. Hi, everybody.
We're married.
We are.
Last name not a
Couple
coincidence. Kids. Yes, 4.
Yeah.
And so welcome to our little show here. So check out chat. Let's see if everyone can hear us. Okay, introduce yourselves in chat. I also want to call to your attention an outline that I just posted for you to download, which is kind of an outline of our system, what we call P4. We don't really talk about it that much, but I want to work through it today because this is basically how we feel that you will discover how we guide our students to get into their dream colleges at wholesale prices and be set up for a satisfying and lucrative career after college and get off mom and dad's payroll and all types of stuff like that. So, welcome if you're just joining us, and I'm going to assume that you can hear us okay, and if you can't, just pretend you can. You've got a bunch of tips, right, you can post in terms of
usability. If you're having trouble hearing or seeing the presentation, please make sure that
if they can't hear you, then how are they going to?
That's really, or if should you lose the ability to hear us, you want to try to refresh your screen and or make sure that there are not other windows open sucking the bandwidth from the presentation. All
right, so we got we had a nice bunch of people register, 100 and something. We have so far, I see Jeannie and Stephanie and Simi. So can you just double check, and if you hear us okay, let us say hi in chat. Let us know where you're from, and we're just gonna go ahead and proceed. Is that cool? And if you have any issues with the download, not sure how we can help you with that, but maybe we can send it to you afterward. So we're going to be talking about. Yes, you see people?
Yes, they're starting to.
So who do you see? Just to make sure.
I see Jeannie and Julia. Hello.
Jeannie, who I actually believe went to college with, which is interesting. You know, we're old enough now that we're getting people that we went to college and high school with on our webinars and clients and all that. So that's it's pretty funny.
Yes.
Funny and sad.
So we're getting old, basically.
Yeah, all of you are.
Older by the minute.
All right.
Okay, good. All right, everyone can hear us. Sounds like so good.
So we got Ayana from New York, Lori from Unspecified,
Vino from Michigan.
I wish we had some Vino. I guess we do.
Yeah.
Deanie Peterson, good from out east, not just the East Coast, Eastern LI, East Long Island. All right, good. So you're in the right place if you are stressed out, you're feeling the pain. SATs and ACTs are happening if you have a high school junior. You're trying, hopefully, not to get bombarded with all sorts of nonsense from colleges and guidance counselors, maybe running around the country like a chicken with your head cut off. And maybe you're just starting to realize, even though you don't quite want to, just exactly how much 1 year of college costs, let alone times 4 times how many number of kids you have. If you are feeling overwhelmed and stressed about this, if you can admit that, give us write in chat the letter O for overwhelm, just so we can make sure that we're addressing you with our marks right here too.
Right, and I'm assuming they don't need to mute anything on their end. I don't think so. You can just listen away and.
Well, I would shut down everything else, but anyway,
I wouldn't chance it by saying anything terrible about us.
If you're feeling,
might pick up on it.
If you're feeling overwhelmed, write the letter O in chat, just so we know, just so we know that we're not the only ones feeling that. And you'll see that you have plenty of company also. I think it's a healthy exercise.
O plus.
O plus, almost like that could be the new Oprah network. Maybe she's coming out with O plus.
O plus.
Not plus size.
We could be O plus.
Not plus sized.
Or maybe.
No comment.
Oh, okay.
No O. Okay. So if you are feeling that way, don't worry. It is not your fault. And that's really because the world has gone haywire since since we all were growing up. I mentioned Jeannie before. You know, we're all probably about the same age. You know, 40s and 50s, And, back then, the schools that were really easy to get into are now super hard. It's ridiculous. College costs have skyrocketed. It can be $75,000 a year. Student debt has increased to like $1.5 trillion, and defaults are on the rise. And 50% of kids don't have a job with a college degree. And again, yesterday's safeties are now today's reaches, right? Without casting aspersions on any in particular, which we do sometimes. So, have you had thoughts about how did such and such college get so hard to get into? Maybe even about your own school. Maybe you're thinking like, I don't think I could even get into the school that I attended. If I'm just curious if you feel that way, if you're curious about, or you're upset or frustrated or confused about how the world got upside down, type a Y in chat just for yes, because again, I think it's good to know that you're not alone if you see other people feel that way. And usually, we know the answer. We know that most people are feeling that way. That's why they're on this presentation. But just give us a Y if you agree with that. Y for yes. I'll be frank. It'll be great if high school's kept up with all the information we're about to give you. Especially with the crazy changes to financial aid that have happened recently, as well as admissions changes. But let's face it, you're not getting any meaningful advice from guidance counselors or your accountants or any other trusted advisors. Are we getting a lot of Ys there?
We're getting a lot of Ys.
Okay, yeah. So you're in the right place. All right, good. So today we're going to outline what we've devised into a 4-part system. It's an approach to college planning. So we hold up the outline because I'm reading from my notes here. Hold it right up in front of me.
I'm Vanna Whiting this.
Yeah. So
hope everyone can see it.
And what you'll notice there, okay, good.
Good.
That's good.
Right.
So that should be up for download. You'll see some sort of wacky looking crop circle like diagrams. I don't know how would we describe those circles down there?
That would be, I think it's a traditional Venn diagram.
Well, it's kind of like
sort of
Mickey Mouse on his side if he had some
kind
of
like
boil.
A paw on its side.
That's better than saying Mickey Mouse with a tumor.
It is.
I think that's funny. So what we're just going to illustrate is that throughout this process, there are different agendas, hopefully overlapping. That's why we kind of made the diagram this way. But you're at the center of this. You're the most important part of this. So we're going to outline our process, but keep in mind that this is really for you. And what you'll see also is that our approach is different. We're not trying to hide that. It's a little bit backwards in many instances. But if after you hear us, if this is your first introduction to us, or maybe you've been on a few of our webinars, if you feel that our approach could make sense for you and your family, then of course we will invite you to take one of our spots for our upcoming class of kids we're trying to enroll. But if it's not right for you, that's fine too. So if for those of you who are new to our community here, if you're wondering who we are and why you should pay attention to us, so first of all, Pearl files 300 to 400 financial aid forms every year for the last countless years. She she knows the forms inside and out. I think what's also interesting, I mean, there's many things that are interesting about you, but I think what's also interesting about your background in terms of our field that we're in is that, you experienced growing up, you had a family that was very wealthy that kind of, went down big time. So that has, a bearing. A lot of times we encounter families and parents who are feeling that way.
Propping up a lifestyle.
Loss, propping up a lifestyle, guilt.
Yeah.
Okay. You also, you didn't stick at the first school that you applied to. You ended up transferring from Skidmore to Cornell.
Yeah.
So we have, experiences that way. I first got into this field initially in around 2000, started advising families with college-bound teens. I had my own really rough experience with undergrad and law school, racking up more than $100,000 in debt. And we could have qualified for a lot of money, but my dad, who was a very low-income, self-employed but disabled artist, really made a mess of the whole process. So his attitude was always, it's going to work out for you. Don't worry about it. But you know what? With all the debt and all of the stress and the emotional toll, it really didn't work out. That's not my dad calling because he passed away a few years ago.
Yes, that's true. It wasn't.
It was spooky though. So anyway, now we have 4 kids of our own. We've got 1 in college. We've got 3 on the way. We're right in it like you guys are. And our goal, not only for our kids, but for your kids, is to have as smooth and stress-free a path as possible to college and be successful after college. That's really the main thing. So that's enough about us. Let's get right into the presentation. But first, let me ask you, this is right from the outline that you have. If we were talking, and you can either answer this in chat, which would be cool, but if you don't feel comfortable, just write it on your outline. If we were talking 1 year from now, right, looking back at this process, what would have needed to happen in order for you to feel happy about how things worked out for your child? I'll repeat that one more time. If we were talking 1 year from now, looking back to today, what would have needed to happen in order to make you feel happy about how things worked out for your child? Just kind of curious. While you answer in chat or on your own, this is very interesting to us. I think a lot of parents don't have clarity on this, and frankly, we go through exercises like this with our coach, and we have coaches, and some parents do though. So I'm always curious to see those answers. What are you getting? Anything good? I know there's a little bit of a delay here.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a delay.
So that's really where we start with our approach. It's really thinking about not so much the 4 years, but the 40 plus years after college. So really, that's not the right question to ask. I kind of misled you. The right question is if we were talking 30 years from now or longer and looking back at now, what would have had to have happened in order for you to feel like this process was effective and your child was happy? Getting any answers, or are people being shy?
I'm getting some answers. Right. My daughter, some are more near-term answers. Some are like a year from now. People responded, I want a good ACT score, essays done, applications in, waiting for positive news. Someone else said that they want to know that she knows what she's looking for in a school, has targeted schools.
Good.
Very thoughtful, and
okay.
And that we know how to pay for it. Another one, same thing, wants to know that what he's looking for in a school, has a solid list, that we feel good about paying for it.
Good. Okay. All right. Let's go. Those are good answers. So I appreciate those. But yeah, I think the real question is, and this is, we did this on purpose. It's really less about 1 year from now. It's really more about 30 or 4 years from now. So that's really at the crux of what we call our P4 approach, which consists of 4 overlapping, not necessarily linear, but overlapping components. So are you ready to talk about P4? Ready for the secrets?
Yes. We're not going to even make you do any exercise.
That's a drum roll.
Okay. Inaugural sound effects.
Told you it's a new webinar for us. All right, so the first part is planning. So what we just demonstrated is that we feel like there's an artificial emphasis on 4 years of college, of a kid's life, which pertains to the college years, hopefully 4 years, not really about the 40 years. And in a way, it's understandable, but it's kind of myopic. And the best analogy that I think that I've come up with in a long time is that is kind of like focusing on exclusively how to get to the airport, not where the plane is taking you. Okay, getting to the airport, not where you're going on the plane, because it doesn't stop when you go to college. In many cases, that's where it starts. That's why it's called commencement when you graduate, because you're commencing on your journey. So don't focus only on where getting to the college, because that's just the beginning. This is really more about. You
definitely don't want your kids ending up and staying and never leaving college. That's definitely not what you want. Right. It's not the end.
Stuck in the airport with delays.
Exactly.
Yeah, we could really flesh that analogy out.
It's merely a step. Yes.
But it's very easy to do this if you get swept up with like the 95% of other parents who are so focused on the rear window sticker and, you know, where my kid's going, how I can view myself, how, you know, in terms of how successful they are through, you know, through that's a reflection on me and all that. There's plenty of other parents who do this, and they're, you know, they kind of brag about all the colleges they visited. They've, you know, 55 colleges since 9th grade, and they're kind of college shaming you into not doing enough or taking enough SAT or ACT prep and all that type of stuff. But that's really small potatoes compared to the bigger picture. So you know what happens if you don't back into a set of colleges that you know that are based on the outcomes. Instead, you focus on the hoodie or the school's rank or the football conference or all that. You could switch majors 2 or 3 times, which can get very expensive if you spend an extra year or 2 in college at 50 to 80 grand a pop, or you know, maybe less, but somewhere around there. You're delaying your entrance into the workforce, which, you know, is an opportunity cost of $50,000 to $80,000, or, you know, like 50% of college grads from 2 years ago, you don't have a job that requires a college degree, but all this debt. It's really, you know, it's really a bad deal if you don't do some planning. Yeah. But a lot of you might be. I'm actually kind of curious about that. Who thinks that their 16-year-old or however old your child is has no ability at all to figure out what they want to do the rest of their lives? Just put that in chat. If you think your kid has no idea what they want to do, or they lack the ability to figure out what they want to do, type a yes in chat, or yeah, or a Y. If your fingers are tired.
Jeff is easier. Yeah.
While you're doing that,
I'll make a comment. Yeah. Just a lot. So some people answered, what would my life look like in a year from now? And then some people, I got responses for, well, what do I want things to look like 30 years from now, looking back? And universally, I mean, we had a lot of similar answers for the, you know, but everyone 30 years, they want their child to be happy. Right. They want their child to be happy. Of course we do.
Yeah, we all do.
So what does that look like? Right. What does that really look like in life and getting there?
Okay. So any questions or any responses?
Total train wreck.
Yeah, kids have no idea. Okay. So here's the deal, though.
Sure.
Right. Here's the deal.
Interests.
Yeah. I think the main issue is that kids just don't know the right questions to ask. And it's not their fault. It's not even your fault. It's not necessarily even guidance counselors' faults, although I'm going to make a few comments on them. And I had like so many different interesting conversations today from people at all different parts of the spectrum. I was like, I got to talk about that tonight. So I tried to make some notes here. But I'll tell you, like in our process, that we kind of, I mentioned this before, we turn it all on its head and we backward plan. This is where we start. We're starting with the 40 years after college. We have a career counselor. What she does is she administers an assessment to each child. And some of you who are on this webinar have been through that process already. And what the point of that assessment is to do is to uncover how a child is wired compared to 3.8 other million people who've done this assessment, which includes each of us 6 years ago before we folded this into our practice and hired Julie, and 2 of our 4 kids. And our next one is coming up. And I don't even know the nuances of the assessment. It doesn't really matter, I don't think. But what's important is what Julie does is she will then take the results of that assessment, you know, have a conference call with each family, and then from there suggest 6, 8, 10, or 12 different careers and majors that lead to those careers where the kids can actually make a living, which is very important to finally get off payroll, mom and dad's payroll, to get off scholarship.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
We one client talk about how some
get rid of the revolving
some kids
door.
are on scholarship.
Right.
And parents, actually, ex-wives, I guess. So that's really where we start with that, because then we can quickly, you know, figure out where to go from there. Now, I was talking to a mom today who was bemoaning the fact that she didn't get any of this guidance at all from her guidance counselor, and she was in a particularly unpleasant situation. She was referred to us by her therapist, her daughter's therapist, because her daughter graduated high school 2 years ago, and now she's on her 3rd college. And she was a good student in high school. She loved to learn. She actually did pretty well at her first college, but had some acclimating issues, social issues. And then she came back, and then she started to kind of lose her mojo a little bit because she didn't feel like the second college was the best choice for her either. She didn't know what to pursue in terms of majors and careers, and that's why the therapist who heard about what I'm describing here referred her to us. But she was saying, the guidance counselors are useless, and I get a lot of bad, some of it deserved, but bad press about bashing guidance counselors. But what I told this mom was, listen, the fault is not with the guidance counselors; it's just with the expectations of parents, because you would think that they should be trained to be able to do this, but they're really not. This is a specialty. Even we don't know how to do this well, which is why we hired someone with expertise for our kids. But it would be nice if they were to do that. So it wasn't just about all the extra money that they spent. It was also the emotional toll.
Yeah, you lose your confidence.
How many kids do we hear about who go away to college and come back? There's a New York Times article recently about how 30% of kids come back before sophomore year. So it costs a lot of money, but it has other costs as well. All right, so here's a question that I wanted to throw out, because I think I know the answer, but on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, how confident are you that your guidance counselor knows your child well enough to create a list of best fit schools that is balanced and strategic and likely to offer generous scholarships and help them choose a major that leads to a satisfying and lucrative career? Should I repeat that?
Yes.
Scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you in your guidance counselor that they know your child well enough to create a list of best fit colleges that's balanced and strategic, likely to give you a lot of money, a lot of scholarship money, and help them choose a satisfying and lucrative career?
Are they allowed to use negative numbers?
So funny. No comment on that. Okay, now one of the flaws, though. Okay, anyone said something high?
Yeah,
what's the highest number?
Well, Mary defended her, said mine's good, but acknowledges that maybe that's the exception, not the rule. But she gave hers a 7. We like ours too.
Yeah, I think we would give ours at least a 7. But she knows, she doesn't know. She's good at what she does. She has strengths and she has deficiencies. We all do.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like many guidance counselors are good at getting to know kids, but they don't know squat about the money aspect, and they know next to squat about the career aspects of it.
Right.
I was talking to another kid today who's got a kid in a parochial school, and he's in 10th grade, and she, this is really interesting. She was the librarian at a public school, and she also sat on the Key Club scholarship board. So she would see all the 12th graders and all their accomplishments, all their resume building stuff that they had done when they were writing these letters applying for the Key Club scholarships. And she's like, at our school, which I won't mention, we haven't even had a college meeting. I hear we don't even have that until like the end of 11th or even 12th grades. Right. So that's another sort of, not really a guidance counselor issue, but it's a systemic issue.
Right. Not the best planning. Like, I'll just say, our school financial aid night was after some of the biggest financial aid deadlines for all of the most competitive schools. And our school had that financial aid night after that deadline. So anyone who didn't know that didn't learn. If they learned it that night, they're going to be like, oh, shucks, I blew it.
Right. Here's how to fill out the forms. And by the way, you're 3 weeks late. Yeah. Thanks. Great. Okay. So, all right. So that was the first component, which was plan. Now the next part is path. So I will then take the results of the career assessment and the sort of it's not just a career, but a strength finding assessment, and the majors and careers that are in growth mode that are suggested by Julie, our career counselor. And we will then use that data to then build a cluster, a list of schools that is reputable across this cluster of maybe 5 or 6, not one, but maybe 5 or 6 majors and careers, because 80% of kids change majors. So you have to go in with a plan A, a B, a C, and so forth to really understand or give yourself the best shot at moving around from one major to another, which is perfectly fine. You'll get it on time if you're applying to schools with clusters of majors. But if you're switching from engineering to philosophy or something, you're looking at a 5 or 6 year plan. or you're trying to go the other way around. It might even be longer. So that's really the next step for us. And then we'll throw in, East Coast, West Coast, big, more traditional types of consideration.
Right.
Now compare that to how, a lot of families and kids will pick colleges, right? They'll start with rank in U.S. News, which, by the way, is easily manipulated. There's legions of examples of manipulation, both legal and unethical. They'll look at the mascots or the conference, football conference or basketball conference and all that. They'll get a recommendation from a friend or quote unquote friend, or the parent or a neighbor who loved that particular school. And that's one thing I wanted to actually point out, that when you get recommendations from other people, everyone's got their own agenda, whether you realize it or not in this process. So in that little Mickey Mouse thing, we've got this, these three circles. I want you to write at the top, if you can squeeze it in there in the top circle, write guidance counselors, because they have their own agendas. Many cases, they are sort of, particularly private schools, they're kind of viewed in light of how many kids went to the certain types of schools. You ever wonder how there are, basically 20 to 25 colleges that every high school recommends to every kid, no matter what? This is because a lot of times guidance counselors have their own agendas. Sometimes they'll say things like, we don't want you to apply. If you apply early decision, you have to go there no matter what, which is actually false. But they had their own hidden agenda about that. I was talking to a client of ours today, and I had such an interesting day in preparation for this. Linda, whose older son went to a Jesuit college, and he went to a Catholic high school. He was told by them not to put down, you're gonna freak out, not to put on his high school resume that he was an Eagle Scout.
Why? That's like one of the greatest things you can do.
Yeah.
That's like one of the things schools actually care about, as opposed to what everyone thinks they care about.
Right. So
why?
So
what
they,
was the reason?
we don't have time to get into it, but it was nuts. And so they ended up submitting a resume for guidance to approve, and then they had a real underground dark web resume that they submitted to all the colleges. That was so they got into college despite, not because of guidance.
Right.
So guidance has one agenda. Another person who has agenda, or sometimes other parents. And sometimes other parents are like, a little super competitive or secretive about who they're working with, or, or for college advising or for test prep or whatever. Well, you have to just be very careful about who you listen to. So that's the second little bubble, a middle bubble to fill in there. And we'll talk about the third bubble in a little bit, once Pearl thinks of it. Okay. So how about going to college fairs? Like, do you find those are those helpful, or are those more confusing? That's another thing that people just kind of traipse around and pick up brochures and all that. That to me, that doesn't really make sense. I mean, it's a good way to sort of get to know some college advisors, but beyond that, it's just a really great way to get a lot of slick brochures that all kind of look the same. I love those brochures.
You do?
Well, because they're all
for decorating,
no, because they always feature like kids from every race and ethnicity. They're all smiling. They're all wearing shorts, even if the schools
feel happy.
No, even if the schools in like northern Minnesota, I know they're warm, even though they're in shorts. No one has a zit, so so that implies that if you go here, you'll be acne free. I just they make me I just find new faith in kids. You're getting agreement. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So all right. So let's talk about some tips or some thoughts we have about how to pick colleges. And I want to give you a tip that two of our clients right now are engaged in. One is a senior who just got into a great school that she's, if you looked at her academically, she should not have gotten in. And one is a junior who's executing our advice. So it's one thing to go on all these college tours, which honestly kind of blend in. It's like everyone, it's like, here's a new $50 million underwater rock climbing, lazy river, whatever facility. Here's the new science building. Here are the new food court with the Chipotle. Right. Here are the blue lights in case you feel threatened. We have a 37-second response time, because the other school had a 42-second response time. So those, that's fine. You need to get a lay of the land, but you'll get more out of trying to figure out whether college is a good fit for you by sitting down with department heads and admissions people one-on-one. So not only are you going to find out about the schools, and not only are you going to have some material to talk about in your college essays, which we're going to talk about, but you will also, if you play your cards right, develop a rapport. So our first with the admissions officers. So the first client I mentioned, Elizabeth, she fell in love with Elon like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And she's an unbelievable. Yeah.
She found it.
Last week.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Mom emailed us.
Oh
Check your emails, bro. Yeah. Well, I congratulate her.
That's awesome.
All right. So yeah, hopefully she's not watching Insulted right now.
No, I'm really happy
she's
to hear
not.
that.
She's like the nicest. Her mom, Jane's the nicest mom ever. So anyway, she, if you looked at her scores and her GPA, one was right in the middle, one was below.
Yeah.
But she has so much just interesting stuff and a great story about her, and which she leveraged. And she went out of her way to have these discussions and introduce herself and to make herself known to the right people, that by her second or third visit, they were all like, "Hey, Elizabeth, how you doing? I can't wait to get your application. I'm really excited." So, they weren't saying we're going to let you in no matter what, but they, and I said, listen, at some point you need to tell her, peel behind the curtain and say, listen, these are my grades, my scores. Like, what do you think? So anyway, she just found out last week.
That's amazing. I'm very happy for her.
Funny you didn't say that. Funny we didn't even talk about that. So another example, which I think is going the same way, is we have a kid, Jack, who is not our kid, Jack. We have a client who's he's got his sights set on. I guess I don't want to jinx it, but but a grade school with a great business program. So he has been working on trying to round out his resume, which I'm going to talk about in step 3 coming up. That he's doing to pursue his career, so far his career interests, as well as something that's going to stand out. So he went to an open house at the business school. He was talking to the head of admissions about what he was doing specifically, and she said, "That is so cool. Hardly anyone does that. I can't remember the last time I saw anyone doing that. That sounds great." And what his mom just told me today was that they met with the head of the business. That was admissions in general.
Right.
They met with the head of the business school admissions, who happens to live in the near-ish area. Mm-hmm. And she was like, "Yeah, I heard about that. That's so cool. You know what? When you write your essay, before you submit it, I want to take a look at it. I want to help you with that." So that's like rolling out the red carpet, for a guy to come in. So it's very important to speak to the right people at these colleges, and that, of course, is part of picking the schools. Not only because you're going to figure out if it's a good fit for you, but it's also going to help you get in. You had an analogy the other day, which was that you feel like you should treat picking a school just as seriously as a home inspection. Remember what you said to me? Of course. So I talked about that because that's so you don't gloss over any lurking liabilities or landmines or horrible things, right?
So I will, just to illustrate that point, Kathleen, in response to what you had asked, has anyone ever been to those college fairs? She said college fairs are total marketing and a waste of time. Hmm. Well, just to spin it around, yes, to not be quite so negative, but they are marketing themselves at these college fairs, and every interaction they have with you being the client, the consumer of their business, the colleges, they are very purposeful in the information they are, letting you see and putting in front of you, to entice you to want their school. And that's all well and good, but you need to be smart about that and be vigilant to know that you're being marketed to, really.
And if you're going to buy a home, which may or may not cost as much, when you bought your home, it may or may not cost as much as a college costs today, you were a lot more vigilant, did a lot more due diligence. Your kids were not in the driver's seat.
If you have a mortgage.
Pearl, kids were not in the driver's seat making that decision the way a lot of...
No, they were not.
Yeah, right. But if you're a lender, you
if you're a lender, so if you're lending money on a home to a family to buy a home, you will insist as the lender on having the home inspection, because you want to make sure that the thing that you're buying, whether it's a house or a college education, is going to give you, one, a return on that very big investment. like I'm going to say that again. You want to make sure that that investment, that very big investment, whether it be into a house or a college career, you're going to get a return on that investment. What does that mean for a college career? Is your child going to come out in a career that they are meaningfully connected to, and which can provide a living for them, give them the ability to put food on their table, and without going into debt, tenfold to get there? Are they going to be able to have a fulfilling, happy life? And how are you going to get there?
All right, so let's move along to the third step. You ready?
Ominous.
It's really not that ominous. The next step is what? Position. Okay, so what does that mean? This is something also that guidance counselors just don't get, because they're so fixated in general on this idea that grades and scores are enough. But really, there's 20 or 25 factors that admissions officers will factor in. Grades and scores are just two of them. And if the recent, I don't know if you've been paying attention to the Harvard admissions lawsuit, but if we learned anything from that, well, I found it very interesting to me, because they released, I don't know if it's the whole handbook or at least a chunk of it, 18 pages of the handbook for admissions officers. There's like a little bit of discussion of the of grades and scores and whether kids could do the work there, and everything else was all these other considerations like social engineering type. Do we want to, are we looking for this or the other thing? So you have to understand that at any given competitive school, not just Harvard, but any school that admits like 50% or less, which is a lot of schools, they reserve roughly 2/3 of the spots at each of these schools. Some people think it's as high as 80%. That's according to an admissions officer at Duke. But anywhere from 2/3 to 80% are reserved for non-academic reasons. So that means that, like in the Harvard lawsuit, it means a lot of recruited athletes fall into that category of a non-academic consideration.
Underrepresented minorities.
Underrepresented minorities, exactly. Not overrepresented like Asians or Jewish kids or whatever.
Right.
Legacies, people whose parents went there, and so forth. So you need to really understand that you can't rely on the stats that are published, because frankly, these other categories tend to bring down those statistics. And I realize that's not necessarily what you want to hear or politically correct, but that's just the way it is. We're just giving you the rules of the game here, so you know. When it comes to what admissions officers look at, about 60% of the equation is academics, which means your GPA, your scores, and your rigor. So I spend a lot of time talking to kids about what courses they should take. A lot of times they want to drop something, and I'll be like, well, that really depends on what types of schools you see yourself going to. If you really want to go to Duke, you can't drop that AP class, because this is what it takes. Here's the blueprint to get in. Of course, we can't guarantee, but we know what it takes, because we have kids every year who get into these Harvard, Yale, Stanford, Duke, etc. type schools, and that's that's why people work with us for that. The other 40%, there's some stuff that's in your control, and there's some stuff that's out of your control, like what Pearl and I were just talking about. If you're an international student or an underrepresented minority, you can't control that. But if you are engaged in the right types of activities, of the strategic activities, or CASA, consistent, atypical student activities, I guess, can you write that in chat?
Yes.
CASA, consistent, atypical student activities, that is going to resonate more, and I'll give you some examples of that. But what I'm getting at here is that getting into a good college, it's not a meritocracy. It's a lot of it is about marketing. Definitely less meritocracy and more marketing than most people realize. So here's something else you should really write down or ask your kid. How are you going to distinguish yourself in the sea of sameness, where 5,000 or 10,000 other kids look the same as you do, or your child does on paper? That's what you have to be focused on. And frankly, that's, we're gearing this presentation toward 11th graders, but that answer begins to be formulated as early as 9th grade, when your foot hits the floor of high school and you start, you enter high school. You're creating a body of work that's going to be evaluated to your admissions officers 3+ years later. It might be less than 3.5 years later. It's a very short period of time. So that's what you have to think about, is being strategic about what you do. So what are some examples of activities that kids do? They do National Honor Society. They do the breast cancer, autism, colitis, whatever combination walk, or maybe those are 3 different walks, for research for that. They do the summer courses at prestigious colleges, thinking that that's going to really help them get into those, the Georgetown summer program
locations,
or the Harvard summer program. Yeah, I mean, those are just pay to play type things that don't really help. What you need to think about doing is, what I mentioned before about our client Jack. He's starting a little business for himself that's really interesting. So that's an example. Some kids join clubs, some kids work. Working's pretty good. It's not as atypical, but it shows responsibility. But starting a business, that's atypical. So it was very gratifying, personally for me, to hear from his mom, like, wow, the head of admissions thought that was unbelievable. It's really cool. And if you fail to acknowledge these realities, what happens? Admissions Armageddon.
Reality will hit you in the face sooner or later. You might as well get ahead of that, know what you're dealing with, and move accordingly.
What's Admissions Armageddon, though?
Admissions Armageddon is, okay, so we work with families sometimes for different purposes. We do everything college planning related, but some people hire us, in piecemeal for certain things, like just forms preparation. In that case, we'll prepare financial aid forms, but we will have nothing to do with selecting the schools, and therefore no idea about what a student's grades and scores are necessarily, et cetera. So I just have their financial information. I have their schools, I submit the forms, and then lo and behold, we're in the spring of that senior year. And at that point, what we do in our practice, we're really telling our clients, send us all of your financial aid award letters, because at that time you should be hearing from all the schools you've applied to, or wherever you put in financial aid applications to, triggers any school you put it into to generate an award letter for your student. So in the spring, that's the time we get all the award letters, get all the acceptances, and see
or earlier.
Or earlier, exactly. But in this case, we had somebody who unfortunately either didn't get the right information from their guidance counselor, didn't rely on.
Not just one case.
No, unfortunately, it's not. But in this,
you're talking about. I know who you're talking about.
I'm just talking about the one offhand that I'm thinking about. Is so she had applied to a handful of schools, and unfortunately, Admissions Armageddon, she'd have gotten nowhere.
This is last year or 2 years ago?
It's a couple years already now. Yeah. Actually, I think the student's graduating next year.
Okay. Because she scrambled and she got in somewhere.
She scrambled and threw in an application to a place she'd never really heard of. I do always say, don't try to get too attached to anything and let the process unfold as it should. She happens to be very happy and successful at this school, so it turned out okay.
Wasn't okay for a while.
Yeah. Right.
A lot of stress.
Not the best way to go through the process. I think we can all agree.
Okay. So now let's get back to a little bit more about positioning before we move on to the fourth component of our P4 approach. And I want to talk about the essays a little bit, because there's nothing more stressful and time-consuming and sort of divisive in terms of between parent and child, in terms of stress creating, than the college essays. They're important, but they're probably not as important compared to all that stuff I just mentioned. But they really represent your opportunity to make a closing argument in your own words to each college why they should take you compared to 5,000 or 10,000 other kids. But the thing about the essays is there's a lot of writing, involved, but it's also time management, and it's very hard for kids to get everything done. So what we always recommend is that you do them over the summer. So we have a combination of one-on-one, not just with me brainstorming, but we also have a team of currently of 4 former college admissions officers from super elite colleges that admit 6 or 7% or less, who help our kids brainstorm and help advise them on not only what to write, but what not to write. Right. Sometimes, what you don't write is at least, if not more important than what you do write. and keep them on task. We also have group boot camps for our one-on-one consulting clients to supplement everything. We try to do everything so they have as much opportunity as possible to get everything done before they go back to school in the fall and start their regular academic workload, which is not, by the way, some people sometimes think, oh, senior year doesn't really matter. I was talking to an admissions officer today who said literally that we care more about the courses that they take in senior year, first half of senior year, than we do about junior year. They want to see that kids have not slacked off and they're still taking hard courses. So if you're taking hard classes and doing extracurriculars and clubs and sports and family obligations and trying to have a social life, and you're struggling through the essays in the fall, you're going to want to shoot yourself. That's what you're going to feel like. So instead, we try to make this happen over the summer, and we're the ones who are telling the kids, okay, here's what you need to do. You're going to, each week we're going to have a call, we're going to have office hours, we're going to have a boot camp, we're going to have something to make sure we keep moving the chains along so you get everything done. You've come this far. Your student is about to leave your nest and spread their wings. You don't want to sabotage the relationship by having to deal with them in this way. Yes. Yeah, and it's not. I mean, look, we have a senior this year. It wasn't so easy for me either to get my kid to write his essay. You had to bribe him, pay him until he wrote a fake essay, which was actually hilarious, really just to get me off his back, I guess. But that's all another story. Now, the other thing I want to just point out here is that sometimes kids and parents think, well, my English teacher offered to help me with the essay, and I actually think that's okay. But what I want to point out, just to draw a comparison to our services, is that we have our admissions officers who worked anywhere from 2 to 12 years in admissions and reviewed about 1,000 applications each year, and each application consisted of at least 4, sometimes as many as 6 essays. So 4,000 to 6,000 essays a year for 2 to 12 years. That's a lot of experience compared to your English teacher, who can probably help you, giving them the benefit of the doubt, with grammar and structure, but they've probably never decided whether to admit someone or deny them at a college. And frankly, have you ever read anything that they've written? I mean, no, right? So I think they're good. I think it's always good to get a second set of eyes after we finish our process, a second set of eyes of someone that you trust, which might be an English teacher, or it might be someone who knows you well, like a parent or something like that. But I wouldn't rely exclusively on unqualified experts. I guess that's my main point here. All right, so those are my comments on how we do essays. And now we are getting to, hold on, the last step, produce, which should also be called Pearl, because it's all about getting the money. And Pearl is the expert at filling out all the financial aid forms, but there's really there's 3 different components of getting money for college. There's need-based aid. This is the stuff you should write down. There's merit-based aid, and there are tax strategies, which typically are used for our clients. It's almost half of our clients who are self-employed business owners with a high income who can't qualify for need-based. So let me just ask you this. I think answer this in chat just because I hear this. I hear different things all the time. On a scale of 1 to 10, how comfortable would you say you are with filling out the forms, the FAFSA, the TSS profile, understanding what should be included and what should be excluded, as well as keeping track of your timelines and your deadlines? So one more time. On a scale of 1 to 10, how comfortable are you with filing out the forms, the financial aid applications? Or filling them out and filing them, filling them out and filing them correctly, understanding what should be included and what should not be included, and understanding that you're adhering to your timelines and your deadlines. I'm just curious because I talked to someone the other day who's like, well, I'm a CPA. I think I can handle it. And the highest number we've gotten so far is a 6. Good. Okay. And I just, what are they mostly? 5, 0, 2. Okay. No negatives. Yeah. That's a lot of zeros. Okay. So which is, you have plenty of company. Again, that's good feedback for us, but we want you to know that, if you feel this way, it's not your fault, because what I was going to say was we see mistakes from CPAs even. There's a gentleman, I don't think I should use his name because I don't want to embarrass him, but he refers us a fair amount of business. And when we met initially a couple of years ago, we were talking about this, how he went through this process with his own kid. And I told him something about how, a lot of people don't understand how to value a business properly. And he was like, oh, I didn't know that. I think I lost like $15,000 a year from Notre Dame. So I over disclosed, So the point is that it's one of these areas where you don't know what you don't know. And Pearl files 350-ish or more. We're trying to get some.
I don't know anything about anything else, but this is all I know about.
You know about restaurants.
Yes.
And you know a lot of Yiddish.
I know some Yiddish.
Yeah, and you make a mean potato pancake.
Thanks.
Okay,
it's not about me.
Well, this part is. This is Pearl. Yeah. Pearl produce. So there's filling out the forms, which is the FAFSA. What other forms can you fill out?
Okay, so there are about 5,300 colleges and universities out there. And of the approximately 5,300, which all take the FAFSA, which determines your federal aid, that's one form.
Just list all the forms, because we got to move along.
There's the FAFSA. And then there's the CSS profile, which about 400 of those 5,300 schools
what else is there?
Require. There is, if you live in New York State, and there are similar other state aid forms. If you're in New York State, it is the TAP application.
What else is there?
There's also the Excelsior application.
What else is
There's
there?
also institutional forms. If you are divorced or separated, there's the non-custodial parent profile.
Okay, so here's the
business form.
There's a lot of we got it. So there's a lot. So I'm just saying. I mean, this is the thing. Like sometimes people don't even realize what's going on here. There's just a lot of crap to contend with.
And how do you know? And right.
Okay. So but it's not just about filling out the FAFSA. Because sometimes, and Pearl spots these frequently.
After reading your book and following you for years, Stephen and I are at an 8.
Nice. Good. We'll see, Heidi. So sometimes there are opportunities to improve your eligibility by moving money around, like 529s, for example. If you are self-employed, you might be able to control your income in ways. I just had a very effective meeting about 3 or 4 weeks ago with our CPA and our client Kim, who's also a CPA by a very high level, and she was like blown away by all the strategies that are going to help her qualify for her 2 kids who are going to college. There are techniques that Pearl spots to reduce or lowball the value of real estate, which comes into play for many people, not always primary residents, but sometimes primary residents. Little mistakes can have huge consequences on there. Missing deadlines or being unaware of which forms to file can really cost thousands of dollars. And I told you, even if you're a CPA or good with forms, that's doesn't mean you're going to get off scot-free. And the reason for that is that there's 1,100 plus pages of regulations behind the easier form, the FAFSA, and that changes every year, basically the last 4 or 5 years.
Something changes.
Something changes.
Yes.
And sometimes they're little things, sometimes they're not so little things. Sometimes there's glitches, there's mistakes, and there's a lot that goes into filing, not to mention what happens after you file, which is a whole nother kettle of fish.
First, I'll educate you that you think that filing forms and then you're done, and then you're done. No, that's just the beginning of the process, the filing the forms, and then there's a whole process that happens after that gets triggered until you finally get a financial aid award letter from all the schools.
Now, another point that Pearl's always quick to bring up is that a lot of times people think, well, should I even bother applying because I don't think I'm going to qualify for anything? But you pointed out, and you forwarded this to me.
Increasingly so.
Yeah. NYU, Fordham, it's a lot of schools that say very specifically what?
That if you want to be considered for merit money, irrespective of your finances, if you want to be eligible and considered for being awarded merit money at a particular institution, you must file the financial aid forms, period.
Right.
That's how you
So
trigger
even
it.
if you're not going to qualify, that's one reason.
Even if you're not going to qualify for need-based aid, you should still submit forms so that you're eligible and in the running for merit-based aid.
If you're not going to qualify for need-based aid, there's a lot of merit money, actually more merit money out there from the colleges, and that really hinges on how much they want you and your standing at that college compared to the cohort of other kids that you're applying to. So frequently, I personally spend a lot of time building out college lists to make sure we have offers from other schools that give a lot of merit money, and therefore just so you know, a lot of times these offers are negotiable. So we're always trying to
again, this is part of how we strategically plan, so that we have some control over some of the results that we're trying to get.
Right. And I'm not saying that, you know, I have a magic wand at all, but sometimes we strike out. There was one day last April where I got literally the same day, one client got 0, which we kind of expected, and another one, basically the same type of argument, got $52,000. So, you know, it's we learn something every year.
But there are a lot of moving parts. Right. So what you can, you know, different schools, different kids, different set of circumstances, different set of finances. It's endless.
And then with high net worth or high income business owners, a lot of times they don't qualify. Sometimes we can help them qualify, but sometimes they don't. And then in that case, we can usually suggest, you know, a handful of tax planning strategies, like I mentioned about Kim, that can lower the cost anywhere from a couple $1,000s a year to, in her case, it's going to probably end up being like $25,000 per year. Some of it comes from paying with pre-tax dollars. Some of it comes from possibly being able to qualify for more need-based aid in some cases, but you don't do both at the same time because they're two separate paths, and a lot of CPAs, hardly any CPA understands the interplay between the IRS regulations and the Department of Education regulations. So that's a specialty of ours also. So I mentioned negotiations. Pearl also does a lot of loan paperwork every year for families.
That's something that people don't realize, like how we're going to pay for it. You know, I don't have anything saved up. Regardless of what I qualify or don't qualify, how am I paying for it? Yep. Mechanically, like literally, how am I paying for it?
Yeah. Well, now there's a gap. And how do we get over that gap? How do we fund the difference? So you spend a lot of time on that. So that's So that's really the system. It's just to review. It's plan, path, position, and produce. Those are the 4 P's. I know you were very curious about that. But you know, the other thing to point out about produce is that has another meaning, and what that really means is that also that your kid and you have to implement or have to take action or have to produce. So. I am putting our application up on the screen right now. If you feel that your approach of our approach and your kid you think would be a good fit for us, then we invite you to complete the application and get it back to us as soon as possible, because this cycle we're going to fill up only with 12 spots every spring. We have to end up turning down kids. So that this year, I think we turned down 9 or 10 kids, you know, starting in June, throughout the summer, because we're a small firm. We give individualized attention. We have a small team, and we can't take on everyone. But if you think that what we described could help you, my advice is to complete the form, including the credit card part. So you just click on the offer. We're not going to run anyone's credit card until we actually have a mandatory phone call or face-to-face meeting in the office if you're local, or Skype, to make sure that we're a good fit for each other. Because this was just an overview. There's a lot more in-depth stuff to kind of make sure that kids know what they're getting into. Personally, I want to make sure that the kids are coachable, and we're not cheap.
Ready.
We have we have a payment plan. We have a one-pay discount, but it's still we're not an El Cheapo cut rate firm, and I don't want a kid to say yes because their parents are forcing them into it, and then not take any of the advice that frankly has been tested and proven. And we have all kinds of terrific testimonials from kids who say, I couldn't have done it without you, who get into Yale and Harvard and Stanford. And that's usually about 15-ish%. I was talking to a client yesterday whose son got in off the wait list at Wharton, and now it's half a year later, and he's thriving there, and he's so happy. His dad was like gushing with pride. That's really what makes us happy, is that when we hear about kids getting in and getting money they didn't thought they were able to get, that's we love what we do. We make a good living, but the emotional, capital, we say this a lot, that we get paid with, I think is yeah, it's hard. So you can't quantify it.
Yep. We give you clarity.
Well, in terms of the value of working with us, we try to position our services, and I think based on our feedback, very successfully in terms of not only providing a monetary return on investment. Like I remember Ralph, who owns the hair, of course, right? That owns the hair salon out in Huntington. So he did something that this was probably 8 or 9 years ago. I mean, we worked with 3 of his kids, helped them afford very expensive.
Like grandparents already.
One's going to getting a CPA. The baby is now a CPA, I think. And I remember he said to me, he's like, after I met with you, I came away saying, I was very skeptical, and I came away saying to my wife, how can we not afford to hire them? Because we end up saving him not only tens of thousands of dollars, but also just the stress and the what do we do now? All that type of stuff, which just eats away at you. We replace that with clarity and new capabilities that your kids will develop, and the confidence to move forward and be successful. And by the way, it doesn't stop after they get into school. We now have someone who helps kids, which we haven't really talked about at all, but helps kids with study skills. And a lot of kids get to college and they don't know how to they don't know how to study. So they've never written a paper before, or their parents have been hovering over them so much, or their tutor's been hovering over them, they don't know what to do. So we have someone who will do an organizational meeting with them that's free. That's part of our services. If you are signing up for this before we hit our max. And by the way, I don't even know if anyone's going to sign up right now. I mean, I thought we've never done a webinar like this before. We usually do these types of talks one-on-one, but we're getting to the point where it's getting harder and harder, and we're looking to expand and kind of leverage ourselves a little bit more. So, I hope some of you are interested in working with us, but if not, it's not going to change our lives, but I think we could change your lives. I think it's a big step toward getting the clarity and the confidence to be able, and you're seeing, I guess, some of the comments from some of our actual clients on here. We did not pay them. They're just here voluntarily, that are getting great results. And, that's what I hope we're able to do for you guys. So please send in, you can fax it, or do you want to post our fax number? It's 908-4418.
Oh, I know it.
You do know it?
Oh, yeah.
I think we're getting a fax now.
Okay, great. It's like, why would anyone care that we're getting a fax? Why are you announcing this?
So, and why is that a sound on my little gadget?
Just to always sound bad.
That's the worst sound.
If you found that sounds annoying, please put a Y in the chat.
Well, okay. So here's the other thing. The other thing is there's a lot of other choices, including doing nothing. But there's other college advisors. There's no one out there who combines the how to get into college with how to pay for college, with the test prep, which we didn't really talk about, and the career stuff. We're really the one of the few, if not the only game in town. But even though we're deadly serious about this, I try to. I can't help it anyway. But it's not really a choice. But we try to make it less stressful and joke around.
We do.
So I'm not doing this to, kind of convince you that we're just goofballs and you should, I'm just a goofball. You should pay attention to us. We do get great results, but we try to have some fun doing it. And for the most part, that's who we attract. We attract parents who are, kind of on the same page. So I guess I should say, if you're not on the same page, if you don't have a sense of humor, there's plenty of other choices. No, it's I mean, it's okay. Yep. We don't take it personally. No. Well, I don't. Pearl does.
Not really.
But no, she does. But no, you really do.
Not anymore.
But I could go with another.
Let's hear it. No. What do you got for me?
Later. So all right. So I think that's if there's any questions, we can ask them. We can answer them now. Otherwise, we can sign off. Are you getting anything you need to address?
Don't forget to brag about Marissa. That's from Lisa.
Yeah. Marissa, our tutor, works exclusively with our clients, and she gets unbelievable results. I mean, there's a lot of great tutors out there, but she's this is all she does. She's not like doing it part-time to put herself through school. She's been in the field about 20 years. We were very lucky to find her 3 years ago through a couple of mutual clients. And she's worked with our own kids, worked with my niece. She, we trust her just implicitly, and she's just awesome. So who said that?
Lisa Joe.
It's Lisa.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. If there's any other questions, we can sign off. Oh, yeah. Lisa Coletti. What?
Don't do that.
What's wrong with that?
What?
She's not one of those secretive cutthroat.
It's not about
Lisa?
secretive. It's just about, we'll discuss it off camera.
She actually wanted to be part of the studio audience.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I told her we were sold out. Sold out from the furniture and mess that's like lurking out there behind the camera.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then we have some questions. Are we taking substantive questions about financial aid?
Yeah, I'll take a few. Yes.
Okay. Angela wants to know, I've been to a live talk and you mentioned your own business should be valued at 0. Why?
Yeah. So this is not that type of, we do other presentations where we talk about that, but that is actually in the directions specifically. That's part of, again, the services that we provide to strategize how to get more money from colleges. But those are buried in the directions, the reasons why.
Okay. Would love to know more about early decision and why it's not binding. Okay, Angela, you are, and this is an example of there being just too much information out there.
Well, before you answer that.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Guidance counselors have their own agendas.
Yeah.
And if you, again, I don't think this is not really the right presentation to get into those types of questions. But that also, if you look at the early decision agreement, read it carefully, you'll see it's not binding. And sometimes we use that strategically to negotiate more.
Okay. Going back to Q&A. Some earlier ones. Have you had any clients that did not receive any money from colleges using your services?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, everyone gets loans, whether you don't have to accept them or not. But we have a lot of clients who are 7-figure earners or close to it. And I remember very clearly a conversation I had with one client where I said, listen, I could help you, but his daughter wanted to go to a certain school. And I said, I don't think you're going to get money there, but I can certainly point out some other schools that will help you because I'm not so sure about the return on investment for that school. And he's like, you know what, buddy? The reason I work my ass off is so I can afford to send her to the best school possible. And I said, okay, I respect that. Just thought I would, just thought I would mention that to you. So she got into her top choice school. She didn't get money. And what was funny, you know what I'm talking about?
Not yet.
Eugene.
That's funny.
And then she started getting to other schools that were offering money. And he was like, Andy, you wouldn't believe it. She got 20. I was like, see, Eugene, it is about the money, right? so that was, but we always know ahead of time. So we don't have any, I can honestly tell you, we've never had a client that we said, you will get money, who did not get money. We've definitely had clients that I have said, listen, I think you have a shot because of A, B, and C, but, I don't want to promise it. But we can always tell we're able to make projections. Certainly
if we're involved in the planning.
Yeah, right.
If we're not involved in the planning, then you're essentially tying our hands.
Well, or it's not your focus, But so we have, I'd say 20% of our clients are more actually. They're primarily interested in all the other stuff, and they have the ability to pay full price. And I wouldn't say they're happy to do it, but they are willing to do that because they think that it's the right fit for their kids. But it's very unusual. I don't think it's ever happened. I'm blocking it out. I mean, I don't want to sound like a huckster, but I really don't think it's ever happened where we set expectations one way and things happen the other way. Now we do have plenty of clients who don't pay attention to us, even though we repeat it over and over again. We
may not choose the schools that have given them all this money.
That's true. Or don't take our advice,
right?
Which is your prerogative. But we always know. I mean, really always, right? So, anything else that we should say before we wrap up? Paul Lockwood.
Thanks for joining us.
Yes.
You mean of a substantive nature, or just in general?
So go ahead and complete the application if you're interested in working with us, and you can email it also. Can you give our email address in the chat there? Of course. VIP@andylockwood.com. And that's going to be it. that's going to be a wrap. So thanks a lot for joining us. I'm sure you had other things to do, but we hope you found this valuable, a valuable introduction to how we do things. And for those of you who are looking for help, we're looking forward to discussing it further. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.